Hi, Mr. B here. I'm doing a follow-up video on patterns. Just a quick recap. We have this idea that, that we're exploring, that music is like an iceberg. There's a lot of stuff above the surface that's obvious. We're talking about dancing and singing and reading music, playing instruments, all the obvious stuff about music. However, under the surface, there's all of this stuff that connects to everything that I want to explore and have conversations about. We're talking about universal hidden content, universal learning processes, universal character traits that are always operating and always connecting from music education and music involvement into every other subject, because those are actually the hidden content, hidden learning processes, and hidden character traits involved in the study of each one of these topics, with a special focus on patterns. And we're going to talk about music patterns today. Now, what is a pattern? The simplest way that I can put it is that a pattern is a meaningful connection, meaningful connection between different pieces of information. It's not just any connection, because some connections are wrong. So, for example, they're not meaningful by wrong. We've got a connect the dots. A meaningful connection would be to go in the order of the numbers to create the outline of the car. If a kid went zigzag across like that, they'd be making connections from the, between the dots, but that would not be a meaningful pattern in the way that, you know, anyone else would understand meaningful patterns. It's very important that we get this meaningful part. So then the question comes up, what are the meaningful patterns that make up music? Well, let's start with the rhythmic side. In the rhythmic side, in music, oftentimes teachers start out with, you know, a quarter note is one beat, and an eighth note is, you know, less than that, half a beat or something like that. And that is only true sometimes, and therefore is not actually meaningful in the most important way. The more meaningful way to approach rhythm is to, because this is the way we understand things, this is where meaning comes and it makes sense, is to group them into a measure so that we have some kind of context of whether it's duple or triple. So back to the example of, is a quarter note one beat? Well, what about in 3/8? Is it one beat then? It's not actually. So you've got to be very careful about the way that teaching happens in the music classroom, because it can give kids, it can set them off in the wrong direction. Now, the grouping of patterns in music for chords, why is it more meaningful to teach chord patterns than melodic patterns where you're talking about scales? Well, when you group things together in chords, it creates tonality. And it's that context that creates meaning. Just like in rhythm, when you group the patterns together, it creates this overarching idea of meaning we call meter. And so meter for rhythm and tonality for tonal, those are the things that bring the meaning. And that's why in music, I like to teach the chordal patterns and the rhythm patterns in groups like that. So for chordal patterns, we're talking about things like do, mi, do, re, ti, re, do, mi, so, fa, re, ti, re, so, mi, so, do. Standard 1-chord, 5-chord patterns, because that creates that sense of tonality. In that case, it was major. So that's my little thing about patterns and why meaning is very important. Now, one more thing about meaning. You know, we are wired to search for meaning. There's a great book by Viktor Frankl called Man's Search for Meaning. And in it, he talks about how we are wired to find meaning and how meaning is the only thing that makes suffering tolerable. Everyone is wired to do that. One of the brain's main jobs is to find meaning. So if we can explain music in a meaningful way, we are cooperating with the hardwiring of how our brains function. And that's very, very important. Just a little food for thought. Please leave comments in the spot below. Thank you.